Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, Councillor Neil, and I believe I see Councillor Taylor too. And welcome everyone from the public who happens to be online at the moment. So, do we have any apologies for absence?
No.
Any declarations of interest? Okay, so I'll take us straight on to agenda item 3, Abergavenny, Magor with Undy and Monmouth placemaking plans, and that's over to you, Councillor Griffiths.
Thanks very much. And it's with enthusiasm, a huge enthusiasm, that I ask Cabinet to approve placemaking plans for Magor, for Monmouth, Monmouth Town, and for Abergavenny. The towns of Monmouthshire, in my view, are at the core of our way of life. So often they're where we enjoy each other's company, where we exchange views on how we shape our communities, where we make music, drama, share leisure activities, invite visitors. They're where so often we trade goods and services. You allow me to reminisce a little, Chair. It was back in 2019. I was working for Welsh Government and was part of a group which was considering how Welsh Government could support local authorities in their support for towns throughout Wales. We noted that over the decades, the investment in towns, the public investment in towns, had been pepper-potted. It appeared random, often that project somewhere else. And so Welsh Government developed a proposal that for each town in Wales, there should be a placemaking plan so that any investment project could be placed within the vision, the strategy for the whole town. And having done that work, I was therefore delighted in 2022 when Marianne, Chair, gave me the Cabinet responsibility for taking forward placemaking plans in Monmouthshire. Caldicot and Ask had already led the way. They had the equivalent of placemaking plans already in place. Chepstow completed its plan in 2022. We needed to take forward placemaking plans in the other towns of the county, and therefore we established in Magor, Monmouth and Abergavenny placemaking steering groups. And they consist in each of the town, the county councillors for that town, all of them, along with at least an equal number of town councillors nominated by the town council themselves, along with local stakeholders identified by the local councillors. This has been, I think, a very fruitful partnership between the town council and the county council in each of the towns. All the councillors involved, participants, the chairs of each steering group, have put an enormous amount of creative work into developing these plans. The steering groups, not the county council, the steering groups, those partnership groups, collectively decided to appoint the regeneration consultancy firm of Chris Jones in Abergavenny to support them in developing their plans. But Chris would be the first to point out that his role has not been to make any plans, but to support the towns in making their own plans. He and his team have done that well. And I commend also the work of our own county council team, Dan Fordham, Claire Sullivan, Sadie Beer, and the town council clerks, who collectively have brought together the local players. I thank all the townspeople who've contributed to the plans and participated in the public consultations. In the initial meetings of the three groups, which I was pleased to be able to attend, I did have a little introductory speech, and that was probably my first and last contribution to the process. That introductory speech was that the plans would not be made by me, the Cabinet Officer. They wouldn't be made by the County Council officers. They had to be made by people who belonged in the towns, who invested in the towns in every sense. I did encourage the groups not to start with a list of projects. Bus shelter here, flower bed there, removing this building, adding that building, whatever. I encouraged them by asking the question of themselves, what was this town for? Why should people choose to be there? And by asking that question, what was the purpose of the town? Allowing that to inform their vision for the town. And allowing any projects or actions to derive from that vision. I believe, you'll make your own judgment, that you can see this progression in each of the plans. Actions deriving from vision, vision deriving from purpose. I'm often asked why we have the focus on our towns in a county which many describe as rural. I reflect on the data as I see it, that around 60% of the Monmouthshire population live within our town boundaries, but a far higher proportion live within perhaps a 3-mile radius of those towns. People who live in villages, but who identify with those towns. So I may live in this village or that village, but I rely on Monmouth, Abergavenny, Magor, and wherever. They identify with the towns and they construct their lifestyle around those towns. I make the point that the towns are pivotal to the county's economy. Not just because, perhaps not even primarily because of the businesses which are active and trade in the towns themselves, but because of the many businesses who invest in the county, because of the attractive, lively lifestyles that towns create for business owners, managers, and workers. I regard successful towns as the magnet for investment and successful economies. So finally, I ask Cabinet to approve these plans. In fact, I dare you not to approve them because they don't belong to you. You're rubber stamping as far as I'm concerned. They belong to the people in each of our plans and all those people who came together to make them. So I ask you to approve them.
Thanks very much, Councillor Griffiths. It's a relief to be have the responsibility of decision making taken away from us and given to the people in the areas who are going to be most directly affected by these placemaking plans.
Sorry, Chair, I should have said earlier, can I declare a personal but not prejudicial interest, as I do sit on the steering group for Abergavenny's placemaking plan?
Of course you can, and I am told that other of our councillors also sit on their placemaking, so hands up, folks, whoever attends it.
Not me.
Not me. I feared I didn't have the time to attend all of them, which seemed to be the only way. But again, I think that's right and proper that you should be, councillors, because you are part of the towns, you are representatives. It's not for you to make the decisions, it's for you to co-create, as Councillor Griffiths said. And I can see your hand up, itching to come in here, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you. Is this an appropriate moment to ask questions?
Yes,
Chair?
it is.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I wanted to make one comment and also ask a question. I just really wanted to say that as a county councillor in Monmouth, I really found the development process very, very positive. I really enjoyed it. Working with town councillors and other representatives of the community, and it felt like it took time, but it really felt worthwhile. It felt like we were really looking at our town and thinking about what the improvements might be, and it felt like quite a good sort of team building experience between us as well. So yeah, I wanted to make that point because not everything we try and do like this sometimes it can be fractious and difficult, but I felt this was really, really positive experience, and I thought that it was well facilitated by all those involved as well. But I do have a question. We have heard announcements about the government's Pride in Place grant allocations, and I just wanted to check in with you about how you see that affecting the placemaking plans. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Maybe. So I should perhaps first explain that for the last 2 years, Monmouthshire has been receiving around 750,000 each year from the Welsh Government's Transforming Towns Fund. And that has been distributed among the towns of the county. And where we got established placemaking plans, Chepstow, Usk, we have delivery groups which have been involved in agreeing the priorities and the allocation of those funds to projects within their town. The towns, Magor, Monmouth and Abergavenny, even as they're developing the plan, they became eligible for the Welsh Government's Transforming Towns money, and as well as making their plans, they've been influential in deciding in the projects which are about to be funded or have been funded by the Welsh Government Transforming Towns. So, for instance, in Abergavenny, it's already been determined their investment from Transforming Towns will go to the Plas Gunter project, an exciting project in Abergavenny itself. Money in Monmouth will go towards the Shire Hall project, again, an exciting project. In Chepstow, for instance, money's gone to what's called the Rainbow Cafe, which hosts the community fridge in that town, and is a prominent building. So that Transforming Towns money has been going through the placemaking process and will continue to go through the placemaking process in our towns. In October of this year, the UK government announced that year by year it would match the Welsh Government's Transforming Towns money. So on an annual basis, and adding another £750,000 to the regeneration pot for the whole county. That surprised me. I thought town centre regeneration was a devolved matter. But although I was surprised, working with others, we have worked through a purposeful way of using that money coming from the UK government. And the purposeful manner, which we've determined, is that, and we've worked with the towns in this, is that we will put the Pride in Place money into a combined pot with the Transforming Towns Welsh Government money, so that at this time, we've already had meetings in Usk, in Caldicot, Chepstow, and other meetings are following. We'll be having 2 or 3 meetings in each town. We'll be putting to the placemaking groups, which we're now calling delivery groups, how would you want to prioritise the projects for 26-27 in your town as those projects derive from their placemaking plans. We're actually encouraging them not to fret over whether this money comes from Pride in Place or for Transforming Towns. We're asking for their priorities. Broadly, each of our significant towns, the most significant towns in terms of population, will have available to them a sum in excess of £300,000. So we're asking them to state their priorities for the coming year. Once they've been collated, we will bring in the new year a report to Cabinet of that collation, again asking Cabinet to approve that collation. And at the centre, we will do the auditing process of which project will be funded by Pride in Place, which project will be funded by Transforming Towns. So whilst I think the interrelationship between the various tiers of government above us, Welsh Government, UK Government, is a bit all over the place, we as a local authority will do what we always do and make sense of it locally, and allow local people to work through their priorities in that way. Does that make sense?
That's excellent. I'm really
Excellent.
glad to hear it. Thank you.
Very much so. Councillor Neil, thank you for submitting the questions and substituting for Councillor John, who I believe is having a very exciting time at the moment. Could I ask you though, in the questions that you submitted, that you focus on the report itself? You make valid issues, but they're not actually the remit of this particular report. They are something which could be taken up in scrutiny or in council if you'd want to.
Hello and thank you. Thanks very much for allowing me to join the meeting. I'm a little bit concerned about being told what I can or cannot ask questions about, which doesn't quite chime, because my questions are about the report and the reports indeed. And really, I'm very positive about the report. I think there's a great deal to welcome in the reports, and really I'm looking constructively to see whether we can.
Oh, indeed, you are, Councillor Neil. Perhaps I didn't make myself clear. Within those 3 questions, you also ask questions about updates on particular buildings, like the Avara site, which is not actually part of this.
I take
but they
your
were
point, Chair.
questions. So
yeah, I
please
take your point.
do ask those questions, but I would never, as you know, Councillor Lee, stop the democratic processes. I'm just wanting us to focus on the particular report.
Yeah, no, that's fair, and I accept what you're saying. It'd be very helpful if Councillor Griffiths perhaps could respond on those particular questions about the former Avara Foods site and the Richards site. If you could answer instead of me writing separately on that, that would be very helpful. And just on the point that has been summarised, the points that have been summarised by Councillor Griffiths, thank you for summarising the funding position. And you know, I assume, but I'm asking also, would you be able to send around a briefing note on that for the benefit of obviously our community councils and ourselves as councillors, rather than us working from this cabinet meeting? My questions, Chair, would it be sensible for me to ask the 3 questions I have, you know, one at a time, and wait for a response? Would that be acceptable?
Certainly under this position, Councillor Neil, but please do focus on the substance of the question.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope that I'll do that. So really, just to say, first of all, thank you for the development of the placemaking plans. I strongly believe them to be an essential part of our towns and communities strengthening and improving. And really, you know, there's a great deal in these plans, I think, that is to be welcomed. And, you know, I recognise that Daniel, Chris, Owen, Robert, and I think, you know, on our team, Paul, Kath, Craig, Matthew, and many others will have been involved in this. And it's really good to see some of this moving forward. So thank you for that. I also find it very helpful that they are, I think, highly accessible in the way that they're set out. And I think that will be really helpful for the widest possible ownership and readership of the plans. So there is much, I think, that I would want to say. I wish everyone involved the best of wishes in making good progress with the plans. I would say that the point that's just been made by Councillor Griffiths about rubber stamping, I understand, I think, what Councillor Griffiths means by that. But presumably you need to take responsibility for progressing and ownership of these plans moving forward. So it's much more than rubber stamping in the sense of that collective ownership, I would imagine. I do want these placemaking plans to be successful, but I am concerned that they fall short in some areas on vision, reality, and ambition. So can I first of all then understand, please, from the point of view of making sure that the wider residents of Monmouthshire realise the value of these plans, it would be useful to understand the full cost of the plans that have been produced, so that people can see these and say this is a real investment that is important we follow up on. And do you see further opportunities ahead to contribute to the plans in order to say, look, if there are areas that we think we can contribute or others could contribute to make the plans stronger, more realistic, more ambitious, then it would be really good to have those opportunities. So that's my first question area.
Yeah, we agree.
Okay. You asked for a briefing note on what I just said regarding the relationship to transforming towns and Pride in Place. What we have been doing is going to each of the towns and testing with them the approach that we'll take on the combined funding. So well, there will be, as you requested it, we can certainly put it into a briefing note that we'll make even more widely available. But I think more than a briefing note, it's important that I will be attending a succession of meetings in each of the 6 towns, where we will start by testing with those groups this approach to the combined funding. So it's very much out there as an approach. If Councillor Neil, you have if you like, a critique that it could have been more vision and ambition in the plans, then given the approach that I've been determined to adopt, that these plans are developed in the towns and not developed in County Hall and imposed on the towns, I've been so keen that that is not the case, then I think your critique needs to be pointed at our colleagues, stakeholders and fellow politicians in each of those towns. And I've no doubt they'd be interested in your critique of the work that they've done. They're not, and we've dwelt on this in numerous discussions that we've had in the towns. These are not static documents. It's not a matter of saying that we've got a sort of instruction manual for the next 15 years. They are documents which will guide decisions over the future in a dynamic manner. And in that sense, they will be continuously evolving. And if any of us have views on how that evolution should continue, then the opportunity will be there to enter the discussions within the towns. The plans were considered by the Scrutiny Committee. The chairs of each of the placemaking groups came to the Scrutiny Committee, and the reception was properly inquisitive, but I think positive, and that's the position I think we can all take going forward. The consultancy cost for the report for developing the 3 plans in total has been 123,000, but I think that's an underestimate of the real cost, because the major investment has been in the many, many hours of contribution by local townspeople, local councillors, and officials, county and town level, who've put their time into these plans, and that's a contribution hugely important, which inevitably and rightly has not been accounted for.
On to your next question, Councillor Neil.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Griffiths. I would just say my comments are, I don't think you should see them as a critique. I'm suggesting constructively that if there are ways in which anybody might be able to assist in any further development of the plans, then that would seem to be a good thing to do. And it's good to hear that these are not set in stone, so thank you. On the second question, should we not pause to ensure these placemaking plans take full account of the consequences of recent flooding in Monmouth and indeed in Abergavenny town centres? And given the very real expressions of concern at the heart of our RLDP debate at Full Council and in many other discussions of the need for greater focus on delivering better infrastructure in our towns where additional housing development is planned, shouldn't these constructive points be taken fully into account in placemaking plans for the towns?
Thanks very much, Councillor Neil. My answer to your question, should we pause? No, is my answer. And we all recognise the recent floods have been dreadful and will influence decision taking in Monmouth in particular, Abergavenny, for years to come. But I don't believe that we should pause, and I don't believe that they require a recasting of the plans, because as I've described, whilst the plans are important and have been developed over just the last year, it remains a dynamic and agile planning process. The plans will be continuously developed in the light of experiences, and that experience will include the experience of these floods. They're flexible enough and they're agile enough to allow that to take place. There will be reviews of the floods. The leader has committed us all to that review. There'll be an evaluation of a range of measures which might lead in the future to prevention or mitigation of future floods. The task of continuously placemaking, the task of the delivery groups which will take forward these plans, that task will be influenced by that review of the flooding experience. I've absolutely no doubt. And the plans are intended to be flexible enough to accommodate that review as it develops. I've no doubt about that.
And the question around, sorry, Chair, the question around the very real expressions of concern in all the RLDP discussions and the debate at Full Council being taken into account around infrastructure. Again, same question again.
Yeah, okay. The RLDP had gone through its public consultation exercise as these plans were developed. Each of the placemaking groups, as they were taking this forward, were keenly aware of the RLD proposals for their towns. They recognised that a new population in the towns, it's possible to exaggerate how significant it is. Most of our towns we're talking about have got 12,000 population. The RLDP will add an increment to that existing population, but an important increment. in that we intend that they should be younger people attracted to the new housing. And that's an opportunity for our towns. New residents, younger residents have the capacity to add to the vitality of those towns. And we should anticipate that and encourage it as well. The infrastructure consequences of that incremental residential development certainly set out in the RLDP, and that was available to the placemaking plans. So in those instances, such as Caldicot, where a new school was planned, then that would have been understood by the placemaking plans. So again, my view is that the exercise that we've undertaken over the last year, there was a clear awareness, sometimes an excitement in Abergavenny, for instance, a lot of deliberation over the impact of a development in Abergavenny East, a lot of awareness of that. And I think the plans already are have taken account of that prospect. And again, they have that fluidity, agility, which will allow them to respond over the years as those developments take place.
So
Thank you.
on to question 3, Councillor Neil.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Why is there not a specific section on economic development in placemaking? The bedrock of every town is the economy and skills locally to develop the economy. And from that flows employment, well-being, health and sports activities and recreation, leisure, culture, and so on. And if that bedrock is stressed or highly challenged as it is now, we cannot take it for granted. It underpins every aspect of successful, sustainable communities. And I wonder if you could explain why there isn't a specific focus on the economic situation within each of the towns that the placemaking plan set out.
Thanks very much. These plans, these town placemaking plans, stand alongside the County Council's economic and skills strategy. They're certainly not a substitute for that strategy. I've already said that I regard the town centres as pivotal to our whole county economy, but they certainly don't encompass the whole of that economy. So the very, very large parts, majority of our economy, does not actually take place within town centres, whilst it is supported by and relies upon those town centres. So I'm comfortable with the fact that there's not been a requirement at any level to incorporate a specific economic statement into the town centre placemaking plan. I think you'll find that interrelationship in our economic strategy. Going to your specific question about specific sites in Abergavenny, what I would like to put on the record is that we are in continuous dialogue with the owner of the Avara site and the town centre site that you refer to. Working with the owner, we jointly considered the options for the future use of both those buildings. In that dialogue, we are, as a county council, supportive. We have developed and we share market intelligence with the owner of those buildings, and we advise on planning issues. But we need to recognise that it will be a matter for the property owner to make his own decisions on the future use of those buildings and to bring forward his own plans. So we are supportive, encouraging, but we must recognise that we're not decision takers on that matter.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. I think that's the end of questions, so I'd refer you to the the recommendations, Cabinet, that we approve these placemaking plans and agree to their adoption, that we approve the establishment of placemaking delivery groups for those towns with the relevant town councils. Under the instructions of Councillor Griffiths, I would hope we see no nays. Thank you very much. We're going to move us on to item 4, socially responsible procurement policy. Councillor Callard.
Thank you, Leader. Good evening, everybody. This Cabinet report presents the socially responsible procurement policy for approval, marking an important milestone in strengthening the Council's commitment to delivering economic, social, environmental and cultural well-being through the way it purchases goods, services and works. Building on the Council's strong track record of using procurement as a strategic lever for local and national priorities, the policy sets out a clear, practical and forward-looking framework that will help ensure every procurement decision contributes meaningfully to the aspirations of the Community and Corporate Plan and the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. The policy represents a significant positive step forward in several respects. First, it ensures a consistent, streamlined and collaborative approach across the Ardell Procurement Partnership, supporting Monmouthshire, Cardiff, Torvine and the Vale of Glamorgan to work in a more aligned and efficient way. This is a shared framework not only reduces duplication for suppliers and contractors, but also makes it easier for local businesses to engage with public sector opportunities across the region. Secondly, the policy provides a clear set of 8 socially responsible objectives, ranging from decarbonisation and fair work to supporting local SMEs and promoting culture and heritage, that will guide the Council's procurement activity in a transparent and measurable way. The development of the policy has been informed by extensive engagement with officers, policy leads, Ardell colleagues, and most importantly, the wider supplier community. The positive response from contractors who unanimously supported the objectives demonstrates a strong shared commitment and confidence in the Council's approach. Internally, the establishment of the procurement network and planned communication campaigns will support effective implementation, ensuring officers have the right tools and guidance to embed socially responsible principles in a proportionate and consistent way. Looking ahead, the policy positions the Council well to respond to new legislative requirements, including the Procurement Act 2023 and the Social Partnership and Public Procurement Wales Act of 2023. Its emphasis on continuous improvement, future updates and clear monitoring arrangements means the Council will be able to demonstrate how socially responsible procurement contributes to strategic outcomes year on year. Overall, the policy offers a clear, balanced and ambitious vision for how procurement can maximise local well-being, champion fair and ethical employment, protect vulnerable people, enhance our natural environment and strengthen Monmouthshire's economy and communities. It provides both a strong foundation for current practice and a flexible framework for future challenges and opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a useful update for us, Cabinet. We know procurement, the socially responsible procurement, is one of our enabling strategies, fueling 2 of our key principles, that of tackling inequalities, social benefits, but also in terms of tackling climate change. And they are very complex and difficult to do so, and procurement is one of our levers. Do we have any observations or questions? In that case, I would move us to the recommendations to approve the adoption of the procurement policy, to delegate authority to approve any subsequent updates to reflect national guidance and to meet legislative requirements. Are we agreed, Cabinet? Yeah. Thank you. Move us on to the next item on the agenda, which I believe is over to you. Councillor Sandals,
Thank you,
and it's
Leader.
a Public Services Ombudsman for
Thank you.
Wales annual letter.
And I'm very pleased to bring this annual letter to Cabinet tonight.
And we're always pleased to receive it, Councillor
Good.
Sandals.
Good. Monmouthshire County Council provides hundreds of different services affecting the lives of tens of thousands of local people. It is inevitable that sometimes people will feel the authority has perhaps made a wrong decision or not done something as well as it should. We always try and resolve these things informally, but when we are unable to do so, people can access our complaints process. The independently chaired Governance and Audit Committee oversees the effectiveness of these arrangements, with the most recent report being received last month. If people are unhappy with the way their complaints have been dealt with by our staff, they can seek redress through the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales. The Ombudsman sends every council an annual letter providing a summary of the complaints they received and investigated in the previous year. They ask Council to ensure that their report is brought to the attention of Cabinet and Governance and Audit Committee and provide the Ombudsman with an update of any action needed as a result of their discussions. This letter was received by Governance and Audit Committee on the 27th of November, alongside the authority's own complaints report. The committee did not raise any specific matters that warranted further dialogue with the Ombudsman's office. The letter shows that Monmouthshire is in the lower quartile of complaints reported to the Ombudsman at 0.3 per 1,000 residents. The range is from 0.22 to 1.08, with an average of 0.45 for those of you that are mathematicians amongst us, obviously. A breakdown by department is shown at the Appendix B of the Ombudsman's letter. The Ombudsman's report included a reference to the timeliness of our responses to their recommendations. There were 2 instances where we needed to work with the complainant on recommendations, and we were unable to do this within the Ombudsman's timescales. There's a clear explanation of this in the pack as well, if you wanted further detail. The Ombudsman's report highlights that they intervened in one case, 6%, compared to a Wales average of 13%. This resulted in an early resolution. This figure indicates that for the most part, our thresholds and responses were considered appropriate and proportionate. Not only is it important to deal with complaints effectively, investigating and putting things right for the complainant where necessary, it's also vital to learn from every complaint to minimise the chances of the same problem occurring again. I'd like to thank everybody involved with pulling this report together and everybody that deals with all our complaints throughout Monmouthshire County Council. And I propose that we write to the Public Sector Ombudsman for Wales, confirming that their report has been received by Cabinet and Governance and Audit Committee, and that their conclusions will continue to inform our work. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Sandals. While it's pleasing to note that we were able to deal with complaints and the Ombudsman felt we were doing it in the correct way and that the number of complaints was small, we cannot be complacent. It is extremely important that we are open and transparent and that we remain accountable to our residents. And this letter is one of those checks that we have in place independently, that we continue to provide a service which can be tested and interrogated by our residents. Do we have any questions? And of course, Councillor Sandals, we will write to the Public Services Ombudsman. The 2 recommendations are to note and that we continue working with them. And I think we do that. Show of hands. Thank you. That now brings us to the National Joint Committee for the National Adoption Service for Wales and Foster Wales, item 6, and I believe that's you, Councillor Chandler.
It is, yeah, thank you, Leader. This is a relatively straightforward and short, more administrative item, really, that just to give you a little bit of background, the Joint Committee and the legal agreement underpinning it provides local authorities with oversight over the National Adoption Service for Wales and Foster Wales, including their national leadership and enabling functions that's provided through the role of director and the central teams. And the Joint Committee is particularly critical for Foster Wales because of the lack of any legislative basis for such cooperation in fostering services. When the Joint Committee was established, each local authority formally agreed to the committee via the respective governance arrangements. In Monmouthshire, that was agreed by Cabinet back in 7th of December 2022. Following this, a detailed Joint Committee agreement was signed off by all local authorities, and the committee is formulated of the Cabinet member for Children's Services or their equivalent from each of the local authorities, plus non-voting officers and stakeholders. So therefore, I'm the representative for Monmouthshire as the Cabinet member for Adults and Children's Social Care. I'm also the Vice Chair of the Joint Committee as well. Unfortunately, the committee's only been able to hold one quorum meeting. The quoracy requirement in the Joint Committee agreement was 60%. And regrettably, it's been really hard. We've only had one meeting where we've been able to get 60% of the representatives to attend in one meeting. After several attempts to find and encourage ways forward to this, we've, as a committee and in consultation with stakeholders, we've agreed to put forward a proposal to reduce the quoracy to a level that still provides that accountability and democratic oversight in the Joint Committee, but makes it more manageable. So we're proposing to reduce the quorum to 40% of the members, provided that at least 3 of the regions are represented in that. We hope by doing that we can move ahead and have much more regular quorum meetings where we can start to make decisions and hold the 2 services to proper account and to drive forward a much valued adoption service and fostering recruitment service for Wales. So that's the proposal in front of us today.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. I can see absolutely why we would want to move in this direction, because it comes back to that point of oversight and insurance, which is so important when we're talking about vulnerable people, in particular vulnerable children. So I heartily support this move. We can revitalise this committee. Is there any questions? In which case, there are 2 very clear recommendations: to agree to reduce the quorum, and secondly, to authorise the entry into and signing of the deed of variation to enable this. Are we agreed? Let's pass. Thanks, Nick. Moving us on to item number 7. It's back to you, Councillor Callard, on the strategic risk assessment.
Thank you, Leader. The Strategic Risk Register identifies the strategic risks to the Council. They're typically defined as those risks that may restrict or hamper the Council from achieving its objectives. The risk assessment itself is a live document and is regularly updated to ensure it provides an accurate representation of the risks facing the Council. I'm sure you'll all be aware that this assessment is presented to Cabinet every 6 months to provide us with an opportunity to review the current strategic risks facing the authority and to seek assurance that the risks identified are accurate and that the mitigating actions put in place are appropriate. Cabinet agreed an updated strategic risk management policy in June 2024, including the further definition of the Council's risk appetite. A period of transition in implementing the policy was agreed to allow the Council time to strengthen arrangements in line with the revised policy. These arrangements have now been developed to implement the requirements of the policy, and these developments include the continued implementation of Directorate risk registers, a risk radar shown as Appendix 2, outlining some of the potential risks that Monmouthshire may face over the coming years, and updates to the Strategic Risk Register itself, including the addition of risk categories, appetite levels, treat tolerate categories and target risk scores. Changes to the strategic risk register since Cabinet last reviewed it in June include an amendment to the wording of risk 1B to reflect the absence of a political majority in the council chamber and to ensure accuracy. An amendment to the wording of risk 3 to reflect the risk related to infrastructure and assets due to limited capital budgets. And a refocusing of risk 10 relating to the progress of the replacement local development plan following endorsement of the deposit plan at council in October. A summary of the strategic risk register along with an assessment of the effectiveness of the arrangements was presented to Governance and Audit Committee on the 27th of November. The committee used this report to assure themselves of the robustness of the risk management process. The full strategic risk register will be presented to the Performance and Overview Scrutiny Committee on the 27th of January 2026 to provide the committee with an opportunity to ensure that strategic risks have been appropriately identified and that risk is being properly managed as per the remit, and the risk register will continue to be updated based on the latest information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callard. It is fairly self-explanatory. It's a very live register for us. As you know, Cabinet, we look at this continually in our own meetings, and will continue to do so. Such has been the events of the last month. We know how dynamic and shifting and uncertain our times are, and how important it is to have in place a robust risk register. So are there any questions? We have one recommendation, that we review and assess whether it provides a realistic and evidenced appraisal of strategic risks. I think we do. There you go. That brings us on to the last item on the agenda, which I will hand over to myself. That is item 8, the Community and Corporate Plan Performance Update. And it's to provide us with the progress made towards delivering the objectives outlined in our Community and Corporate Plan. It seems almost a lifetime ago, but in fact, it was back in 2023 when we passed the report. And such is the volatility of our times, Cabinet, that much has already changed since we agreed the report in council, not least, in fact, the composition of our council. Over time, I think we've learnt a lot as a council, as an administration, and our thinking has evolved. You'll recall, and it's a point that was made by Audit Wales to me very early on, that we inherited a council that largely reported around activities and outputs with some outcomes, but very few. That has been changing, which is shown in this report, but it's still very much a work in process, as you shift towards reporting against outcomes is as much a cultural shift as it is a technical shift. But we are seeing those changes. This report is based on the milestones towards the targets that have been agreed and updated. It is a progress report, so it is less on outcome reporting, but I think has been acknowledged at scrutiny over time that there are incremental improvements, which I think it's important to note. It goes along with our enabling strategies around data, and particularly increasing our capacity to manage and use data by all our directorates in understanding our performance. And this plan is only one of a whole raft of measures we have in place, as well as levers and tools to test our performance and without wanting to in any way make Councillor Neil blush. The Scrutiny Committee performance and oversight is actually a very important part of this and does look at these reports. Some of the things that we may have emphasised more 2 years ago is the emphasis we have placed on cross-border relationships, in particular the emergence of the Marches Forward relationship, in which we remain active around transport, around the green agenda, and around our food strategy. But the other cross-border relationships that we have developed with regard to addressing the climate and nature crises, particularly in terms of river management with respect to the Usk and Wye, which has really been driven forward by Cabinet Member Councillor Maybe. That is a feature and it grows out of our strong commitment to partnership and collaboration. And the placemaking plans was another aspect of that, which perhaps would have taken a bigger prominence in the plan at that time. The second part, which I think would have been highlighted more and is absolutely central to the approach that we have taken, Cabinet, is the emergence of a more systematic preventative approach. It has always been a feature of the Council. What we have tried to do and report in different ways is to ensure that it is not siloed or activity-based, but it is focused and strategic, hence the emergence of the plan led by Councillor Chandler on wellbeing. It is implicit within the report, but not explicit. So this is not the place that we would monitor or comment on, but we now have the structures as well as the plan in place to enable us to do that and to shine a spotlight on this plan. Thirdly, it's the way in which we have really systematised our working with young people. And not just in terms of co-creating through our youth service, but the work that we do in schools, but also being led by them, both by our youth forum and by becoming the first deforestation champion council in the world, apparently. I expect we might find one somewhere, Burkina Faso, perhaps, who knows. But that was led by our students. And you recall what was a wonderful council when they came really to make a demand on us, a demand not only to sign up, but not sign up as a performative action, but actually agree to an action plan that they would hold us account to. And out of that action plan, we have in fact changed our menus and looked at the supply chains of our food, which is fabulous. But it was also an indication of how much we have looked not just at our youth, but the whole range of the life cycle, coming as part of that with older citizens, becoming part of the WHO's global network for older citizens, which is helping to drive an age-friendly approach. Again, absolutely explicit in our equalities work, there in the plan, but has it evolved because we have driven through these approaches. So if I could just summarise the performance, we monitor and report against each of our 6 objectives and established a evaluation framework which is well known now to Council, a scale from 1 to 6, with 1 as unsatisfactory and 6 as excellent. 5 of these objectives have achieved a level 4 rating, which is considered good. And the remaining objective, a green place to live, has been rated at level 3 or adequate. If I can comment on the last one, while we have taken significant steps to reduce carbon emissions, much of this is outside our control. And we struggle, along with all public sector, to meet our targets. However, in a conversation that Councillor Maybe and I regularly have, but also we have Cabinet, it is absolutely essential that we maintain our ambition, that we maintain the target, rather than we adjust. We will not reach that target without being persistent and consistent. If we accept failure at this point, we are accepting failure not only for ourselves, but the future generations. And we let down those students, those young people who continually demand of council that we are seen to act better and more consistently. So we need to do more work, but we also acknowledge that far better to assess it as adequate and keep on that road than to adjust because we are willing to let go of our ambition. That is not the right thing to do. What I would like us to think through as we go forward, we will be producing the full annual self-assessment in the summer. This will be focused on our impacts and incorporate the lessons learned. And I know from the process that we've taken thus far, Cabinet, that this is a continuous process. And while a report emerges, much of the learning is already inserted into the work that we do and into the reports that we take to the scrutiny, whether they be updates or new approaches or policies, and that we commit to working in that way. And the full evaluation report will come to council sometime in autumn. Are there any questions? In which case, we have one recommendation, which is to continue and to ensure that evaluation moving towards outcome and impact orientated reporting is the approach that we take and adopt with officers, and we continue to work closely on scrutiny in improving our report performance. Are we agreed? Yeah. Thanks very much, Cabinet. I think with that, it's all time to go home. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Nick,